welcome everybody. As Evelyn said, we're really excited to start these conversations today. I'm going to go ahead. So we're utilizing a presentation style called Pechakucha. So we know that everybody's been in a lot of virtual sessions. There's been a lot of great conversations over the last few days, and people have just had lunch. And so we want to keep things moving fast and furious, get through a lot of different content with a lot of different partners, and hear a lot of different perspectives on how access to capital and technical assistance for small business organizations align, and how we can be better at systems change work and building out ecosystems to really have an impact with getting capital to the communities that need it the most. And so that's going to be our style of presentation this morning. We'll be announcing each speaker and switching out presentations very rapidly. So stick with us. We promise that it will be a fun and engaging session here this morning. And I'm going to kick things off with a presentation on what LISC provides in terms of our access to capital. So give me one moment while I switch out my PowerPoint and make sure that I'm doing this correctly.
Well, since we are, let's pretend we're in person. While we're having a few technical difficulties, if we were in person all together, we'd still be having conversation. We're thrilled. We're really excited. Beth and I, we are newer to the team here at Rural LISC. Beth joined at the beginning of this year, and I joined last year. And so
sorry to interrupt. We're ready.
All right, enough about us. Let's go.
Can everybody see my LISC and small business capital slide? Yes, we're good to go. And I promise to get this worked out before our presenters start, but there will be a little bit of a break between each presenter. So as Evelyn mentioned, I joined the Rural LISC team about 7 months ago. Access to capital is a new focus for small businesses within our team. Our bread and butter has really been around affordable housing. And so we're really looking to see what can we do to build out our access to capital work as it relates to small business. And we do direct lending, but we also provide support for small business organizations in relationship to access to capital. Oh, now I'm having to do this manually, so I apologize. So we offer a diverse range of loan and equity products for commercial, industrial, and small business development to support job growth and economic activity. Those really vary from a large capital ladder of microloans through our Kiva program, all the way to multi-million-dollar loans for commercial real estate development. And I want to center the conversation around our 4 values: equity, collaboration, innovation, and learning. I think that sets apart LISC as a CDFI and a lender, that we really want to focus getting resources to those who have lacked resources because of systemic problems. We want to collaborate with local partners, and we're learning together. So Kiva is one of the great ways that we provide access to capital through microfinance. We've had a long-term partnership with Kiva to bring in local organizations as trustees to access 0% interest loans up to $15,000, and LISC provides matching support for those dollars. As I mentioned, there's 0% interest, no fees. The terms range from a year to 3 years for those products, and they're really accessible for any sort of borrower. They really just look at the debt to income ratio for the borrower, proof of separate bank accounts, and government issued business proof. And this is one of our great partners in Lufkin, Texas, Tasty Jacks. They're a couple who wanted to expand their business during the pandemic because they had been laid off because of the pandemic. And so they really chose entrepreneurship as their path forward. And with Kiva, they were able to move from an online platform to having a storefront and really take a step forward in growth with their small business. We also offer economic development loans up to $500,000 for working capital and leasehold improvements. And that with those products, we work directly with the small business owner, but we love to work with our partners to build out that pipeline. An example of a loan that's we're currently working on in Eureka, California is a $100,000 loan for Mantova's 2 Street Music. They've seen a surge during the pandemic of people interested in music lessons and equipment. And so we're helping to get the inventory that they need and to refinance some of their current debt to grow their business. We also offer Makerspace Loans up from $500,000 up to $3 million. We're really looking at adaptive reuse of old industrial buildings and warehouses and community spaces for makers for those lending products. And I know a lot of artisans and creatives also really benefit from those programs. And that's an important link to our creative placemaking portfolio as well. And then our sweet spot for lending really is our commercial real estate loans. This is a picture of a historic building in Elkins, West Virginia that we're currently working on a loan for called the Tigard Hotel. We were able to provide $120,000 for pre-development of that building. And again, it's looking at how can we reimagine our main streets and our rural communities and enhance and re-enliven some of those commercial buildings for our communities. We also want to innovate beyond what we offer in terms of our loans. We want to see where there are gaps in our lending products and create new products. So one thing, I've been partnering with our our Director of Disaster Response and Resiliency on a program called Building Business Back Better, to look at 0% interest loans for businesses in wake of disasters. And then we've also identified that that we need to build out an island strategy, because on the islands that we work with our leaders that are pictured here, there's definitely a lack of access to capital. So that's something we're currently exploring. How can we innovate? How can we fill the gaps in access to capital in those communities? We have several affiliates as well. Our LISC Strategic Investments team offers fund management from opportunity zone funds to a variety of statewide funds. And they're looking at off-balance sheet funds. For example, the Black Economic Development Fund invests in Black entrepreneurs. There's also an opportunity fund across the state of New York that supports small business loans in response to the pandemic. Another opportunity with our LISC Strategic Investments team is the Soar Fund that's available in the states highlighted here. The Soar Fund ranges up to $100,000 for small businesses. And we have a partnership of 13 local CDFIs across the state that are processing those loans. And LISC is managing the fund through our strategic investments team. So that's another way that we partner with CDFIs across the country. We also have a policy team that's putting together recommendations on access to capital policy and programs like the SSBCI program. So we have a list of recommendations that we'd like to see being considered for CDFIs by different states. And we also have the ability to manage funds that may come out of that program. The New Market Support Corporation is another affiliate. They mentioned this particular project that we would have seen if we'd been able to be in the Delta together, the Travelers Hotel. Again, it aligns with our creative placemaking work, supporting local artists and giving arts programming, but also providing a needed hospitality business in Clarksdale, Mississippi. And lastly, we have an affiliate called Amita, which is our SBA lender. We work closely with them on loans that qualify for SBA lending and also that may be in communities where we don't have partnerships. or there might not be as much of a mission alignment. I know this was quick and furious going through all of what we offer. I just want to end with a photo here of our model where we're really looking at helping you connect the dots and map out strategies. Because they've invested in this small business development position in my work here, I really look at this as a partnership and working with you to map out those different opportunities for finding a way that we can help bring the capital that we offer to your community. So I was the guinea pig here with the first presentation, but I hope you got a sense of what LISC offers in terms of our access to capital products. And with that, I will turn things over to my colleague, Evelyn McKinney.
Thank you all very much. I'm Evelyn McKinney, and I'm going to share my screen and we will move forward into the next presentation. Thank you so very much, Beth. Once I'm done, we will then hear from a number of our practitioners. So I'm going to, okay. It says that you can now see my application, so I'm going to go with that. Rural America is home to a diverse spectrum of over 60 million people, from millennials to retirees, from farmers to healthcare workers, to high-tech manufacturers, supporting families whose local roots stretch back for generations. Business districts within or adjacent to the communities we serve have experienced a lack of investment, and the small businesses within them often require additional capital and supports to launch, sustain, expand, and create new jobs. The pandemic and other natural disasters have also upended the entrepreneurial ecosystem, creating both significant challenges and emerging opportunities, and small business needs us now more than ever. Welcome and good afternoon to everyone. My name is Evelyn McKinney, and I am a program officer at Rural LISC, serving on the economic development team. I have been in my role for just over a year, but am confident I have already hit my terrible twos. Prior to joining this organization, I ran my own company. So understanding the importance of supporting small business is a lived experience. Today, I am excited to tell you more about the LISC BDO network. I am going to hit pause for just a moment, and I am going to go back to resharing my screen if you don't mind. Let's try this one more time. And I'm actually going to see if I can. Hopefully this will not continue to advance on its own. So we're gonna move forward a little bit and let's frame our conversation. An entrepreneur cannot simply flip a sign in a window signaling they're open for business. Beyond the passion, they must be prepared and they need to have a solid plan. If we simply tick off a list of challenges just to operate in a rural community, such as inadequate and spotty broadband service, barriers to accessing capital, hiring and retaining a qualified workforce, geographic isolation, it makes it even more amazing to learn that despite these challenges, rural entrepreneurs start businesses at higher rates than their urban counterparts and play a particularly vital role in rural America, creating roughly 2/3 of new jobs and supporting the economic and social well-being of their communities. Here is where the LISC BDO network comes into play. LISC is an investor, a capacity builder, a convener, an innovator. We raise capital and work with local partners who are trusted by their communities to help support people and places. In 2020, LISC ramped up our partnerships with local entrepreneur serving organizations who provide technical assistance supports, technical assistance and supports, such as coaching or mentoring to small businesses in rural communities. As the slides are showing you, faster than I can talk, today our business development organizations, which we affectionately call the LISC BDO network, focus on developing a pipeline of educated and skilled entrepreneurs. They do this by improving access to capital, providing educational business processes and tools, and fostering an optimized pipeline for small business to take their products to market. In 2020, LISC invested capacity building grants and supports to 130 BDOs. During the same time, LISC also awarded over $6,000 or 6,000 grants to small business in excess of $82 million. Of that investment, rural small businesses received 1,800 grants, totaling $30 million, with an average grant of $16,711. During that same time, the BDOs in our network, which you're now going to see on a map on your screen, they served over 13,000 small businesses across a geographic footprint of 27 states, Puerto Rico, and the US Virgin Islands. LISC grows intellectual capital and builds capacity through investment in the LISC BDO network. Organizations who serve entrepreneurs and small business, where we offer capacity building grants to BDOs to support staff and other program related costs. We train and we provide access to LISC's data management system to support BDOs in tracking impact. We have network building opportunities, such as interactive sessions that are offered on a quarterly basis around organizational capacity building for our BDOs, capital funding opportunities, as well as ecosystem building. What you see on the screen here is actually one of our partners. Well, that was one, it was the Catalyst. They're in Alabama. What you're now seeing is a virtual masterclass in Alaska. And this is really just a demonstration to show some of the partners who are really investing in some of our rural communities and how they're making an impact. We also offer 30-minute coffee shop sessions to highlight work across the network and a monthly newsletter. The slide on the screen that you're seeing here is actually yet another partner, Network Kansas, and this infographic really demonstrates the impact that they are having with their e-communities who are serving rural communities across the entire state of Kansas. Well, my slides are telling you thank you, but I'm just going to just say one last thing, and that is we also have a rural LISC community of practice, in addition to all of the features that I described just a moment ago, which is part of the larger LISC network in serving BDOs. Our rural LISC BDO network also has, we also have the ability to cultivate relationships. We are going to, I'm going to stop sharing. There. So our rural BDO community of practice, we really want to apply a lens specific to rural communities. We are cultivated, I am cultivated with this work, or I am dedicated to cultivating relationships with those entrepreneurs serving organizations across our geographic footprint. It is important that we, as an organization, that we understand what's happening, boots on the ground, and that is not the work that I do. You are the trusted partners in your communities, and we need to know how we can best help and serve you to be able to, so that you can in turn serve entrepreneurs. My role and our commitment with small business is to connect you not only with one another, but to all of the pillars of the rural LISC, our rural LISC network, which is everything from access to capital, broadband, workforce development, as Beth mentioned earlier, disaster response and resilience, and placemaking. We will convene meetings with a rural lens. We will always foster peer-to-peer learning, having that exchange with one another. We are committed to ecosystem building as well. If you are a local, boots on the ground organization supporting entrepreneurs and small businesses by providing technical assistance, ecosystem connections, advocacy, capacity building, we are extending an invitation to you to please consider joining the Rural LISC BDO Community of Practice. My email is M as in Mary, CKINNEY, and I'll drop it in the chat, at LISC.org. Would love to hear from you, and we would love to have you join our network of wonderful entrepreneurs serving organizations. Thank you, and have a wonderful afternoon. Next up, we will be hearing from a change maker in serving actually 2 Native American communities, Native American tribes. This woman, without words, we launched into a relationship with her. Not only myself, but other members of our team. Heather Fleming, who you see on your screen right now, she is waving. She is the director of Change Labs, committed to both the Navajo and Hopi nations. We are so excited to hear about what it takes to build a Native entrepreneurship ecosystem. And without further ado, Heather, thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Evelyn. And Yate, everybody, She'e, Heather Fleming, Inishia. I run Change Labs in Tuba City on the Navajo Nation, and we are a Navajo-led nonprofit that fosters the startup and growth of Native-owned businesses. I'm going to tell you a story today that reflects the realities of the entrepreneurial ecosystem on Navajo and what it's like to be a Navajo business owner. But before I do that, I just need to ask a quick question. Are we advancing our own slides, or are they just advancing for us? I think they're
Heather, if you say next, we can advance that for you.
Okay, great. Let's go ahead next then.
Thank you.
So I started my first company 11 years ago in San Francisco. And I remember filing my incorporation paperwork in a big office in downtown SF. I'm sorry, you can go ahead and advance to the next slide. I know we're supposed to be zipping through these really fast. So my articles of incorporation were reviewed on site, and within 3 months, I was working with clients in a rented studio in the Dogpatch neighborhood, building a team, and it wasn't visible to me at the time. But my experience was the result of a healthy business ecosystem. It was easy, it was empowering. Go ahead to the next slide, please. And I came home to the Southwest 10 years later to start Change Labs with my co-founder, Jessica Stego. She's also a Navajo entrepreneur. And we had this vision for building an ecosystem for entrepreneurs and change makers, physical hubs in our communities where entrepreneurs can work, where they can network, learn, access information, tools, modern equipment. And I remember filing the Change Labs Incorporation paperwork on Navajo too. Actually, it was more like trying to file my paperwork. So go ahead to the next slide. So after flying to Flagstaff, renting a car and driving 3 hours to Window Rock, Arizona with paper copies of all these forms. Oh, I reordered the slides this morning. I'm so sorry. I sent them to Erica. If it's possible to get those slides up. If not, I'll just keep rolling right through it. Should I just keep rolling? I'll just keep rolling. It's not a big deal. But apologies, the slides might not line up with what I'm saying, but just roll with it. So anyhow, I'm driving to Window Rock, Arizona. It's this long ass drive and I have all these papers and copies of forms. And I was told to bring this to a person who would process the paperwork. But when I get there, they tell me this person has retired. They haven't yet found her replacement, that they'd be processed as soon as they could hire somebody. 2 months goes by. I'm calling them every week. And then going into month 3, Jess and I decided that we're just going to register with the state of Arizona instead. And 5 days later, after registering with the state, I had everything that I needed to open a bank account, set up a payroll system. Go on to the next slide. So next, we drive to the business development office in Tuba City to apply for a business site lease. So this is a process that any Native entrepreneur has to go through in order to access land for running a business. Okay, now go back 2 slides, or it doesn't matter. Just go on to the next slide. So the Navajo Nation is the size of West Virginia, but 90% of our land is held in trust by the federal government. It's too rugged, it's too rural for development, which is why when you drive across Navajo and Hopi, you see almost no development. So 2 slides ago, there was a picture contrasting the Tuba City versus Cortez, Colorado. So Cortez is a border town to the Navajo Nation. Tuba City and Cortez are exactly the same size in terms of population. But in that slide, I hope that you saw that Tuba City is like this and Cortez is like, boom. And if you drive through those 2 towns with the exact same population, 45 minutes, Cortez is 45 minutes off the reservation. To me, it's a very visible testament of the lack of development, the lack of small businesses in Native communities. So our local business development office, I guess go on to the next slide. I'm not even sure what to expect now, tells us that there's no leases available in our community, try again later. So we inquire about the Bureau of Indian Affairs buildings that have been sitting vacant on Tuba City's Main Street since the late 80s. Surely we could fix up one of those old buildings because nobody's been in them for 30 years. And we're told to request a meeting with the district supervisor. She tells us to talk to our local congressman. That meeting took a few months to secure, but we did it. And then our congressman tells us that first we need to set up a line item on the congressional budget to clean up the lead and asbestos in these buildings. I'll go on to the next slide. And that we need to work with the Navajo Nation executive branch, the Navajo Washington office, the Department of the Interior, and Congress to get those buildings released back to the tribe. So how long is all of this going to take? Nobody really knows, but a tribe that was able to pull it off in the Pacific Northwest managed to do this in a 20-year timeline. So we've now wasted a year. The Business Development Office contacts us again to tell us that there's a privately owned building in Tuba City that might have some space for rent. Next slide, please. It's this space is like a yucky strip mall, but beggars can't be choosers. So we make inquiries to an unresponsive property manager. I fly back to Phoenix to knock on their office door and finally get my hands on some lease paperwork. We spend about $5,000 in legal fees to get everything redlined and back to the property manager. But then months go by and then a call from the Navajo Nation government comes. The space that we're trying to lease isn't available. The Navajo Nation and the property managers are locked up in a legal dispute and they're not allowed to lease space anymore. So then, next slide, we hear from a local Tuba City developer who's constructing a housing facility on 8 acres of land in Tuba. Would they consider adding us for a tenant? Sure, they say. So we partner with them. Next slide. So now we've invested about $63,000 in architecture and design services for a 4,000 square foot new build. But when COVID hits the reservation, everything comes to a halt. Navajo Nation shuts down. And when it reopened 10 months later, construction costs have more than doubled. The developers can no longer secure the financing they need to keep this project going. Next slide. So now it's 2021, and we've been at this for 4 years. We're out of options. We're out tens of thousands of dollars, and we kind of have nothing to show for it except for some beautiful renderings and frankly, scars of experience that the business owners in our communities deal with day in and day out. Next slide. There's no one to help you with this stuff on the reservation. The onus is completely on you as the business owner to broker impossible relationships, to navigate complex federal policies, to secure the resources that you need to persist and survive. You have to find the alternatives, or you have to build the solutions in order to do whatever it is that you want to do. And our story is by no means an isolated story. Next slide. Summer Brown is one of the businesses in our incubator, and she runs Lotus and Lane Leather Goods from a small corner in her garage because she's never been able to access a business site lease. Since she can't own the land her home is built on, she's also not eligible for loans despite business success and despite her plans for building a tannery and employing people in her community. Next slide. Nick Smith, another member of our business incubator, he runs Nick's Print Shop, and he wasn't able to lease office space in his community due to the lack of electrical infrastructure. So he took the steps to convert his home site lease into a business site lease so that he could build his own print shop right next to his house so that he could conduct business. Next slide. So what does all this say about ecosystem building in Native communities? First and foremost, we can't assume that what works in rural America works on Native lands. We have to acknowledge that Native Americans are forced to play by a completely different set of rules than Americans, that the rules to the game that we're playing were created centuries ago, and they were designed to exclude, oppress, and deprive Native people of wealth and resources. And that's a legacy that continues to this day. Next slide. I'm here today because I'm completely out of patience with this process. Something needs to change, and it starts with building awareness, with finding people and resources that can help. And I wanted to close with a shout out to these links so that if any of you are interested in learning more about these issues, there's a link to a really great article published by my colleague Lakota Vogel at Four Bands Community Funds on this complex problem of Native American lands. And then there's also a link to an article that Change Labs just published about the challenges of building Native American entrepreneurship ecosystems. And with that, I'm really looking forward to today's presentations and discussions. Thank you all for having me.
Thank you so much, Heather. What a wonderful and really interesting presentation. I'm sure there will be questions at the end for those who have curiosities about how do you really catalyze in order to make change. So really do appreciate that. Next up, we are going to be graced by the presence of Mr. Matthew Weaver. He is the manager for community and economic development with the Association for Council of Governments in Oklahoma City. Matthew, you asked a question, and the answer to your question is yes. If you just similar to Heather, let us know. We will advance your slides for you. Having said that, we are going to, nice. Also take a look in the chat, people are responding. And so thank you for being supportive and really lifting up our speakers. That's really nice. And it's very encouraging as well, because we are a community serving one another and helping one another, regardless of our geography. So without further ado, we will launch your slides, Matthew, and you are on deck, sir. And we lost him. There you are. Just a moment, Matthew. We're not able to hear you. So let's. Matthew?
Now. No.
It looks like Matthew's on, but his oh, there he is. He's unmuted now.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Matthew, welcome.
You can hear me. Oh, well. Buenos dias, howdy, and good morning. I want to thank everybody for staying and throughout this session to learn all this amazing information about how you can strengthen your communities and your organizations to make a difference of taking your community forward. And as you can see, I want to talk to you about regional connectivity and some stakeholder engagement nuggets for you. Quick background, in my former life, I administered Oklahoma State Main Street program, and it just kind of lit all sorts of light bulbs for me in regards to opportunities working here at the Association of Central Oklahoma Governments. My story I'm going to tell you is related to COVID. It's the same story, but this is the catalyst for it, where the COGS were given a tranche of money to go out and do good. And we were one of those COGS that said, we really want to do good and we want to make it sustainable. So we figured, what's it going to be? So you saw on that first slide, we figured out we had to have a discussion. So what's available? What do we want to go after? And I apologize for this. Slides got me a little wicked here. So here's the story. So we knew that there was a great need to get communities coordinated, actually to have leadership development happen in order to have Main Street or any kind of planning project be successful in their community. So we were looking at, now that I'm on the Council of Government side, I had no idea that I should have been partnering with Main Street. So now that I know that, now you know this, and this is going to be a story about collaborations between my Council of Governments, University of Oklahoma, and the Oklahoma Main Street Center out of the Department of Commerce. So the big picture is, how can we do regional economic development cohesively? So knowing that Main Street works, knowing that visuals work, we decided that we wanted to have a collaborative program with Main Street and Institute for Quality Communities so that all communities could have a kind of a Main Street structure. So it's all about careful planning and preparation. So we brought together the key stakeholders. First of all, it was my collaborators, the university and Main Street. We talked about, can this happen? We talked to the communities, the 50 communities in my area. Is this something that you guys would want to entertain? Because if it is, we want to have a competition to bring this to your doorstep. So in order for the communities to understand and apply for this, we spun out the scenario. You can apply for this. We've connected the dots for you. We've got a shared purpose of taking community forward. We want to bring a planning demonstration project to a community through the Institute for Quality Communities. And we realize that planning will get you all excited, but that doesn't do community development, and that doesn't do anything about sustainability and program development. So the conversations with our communities was on the application, you can choose to do Main Street or just planning. Well, they all want to do Main Street, because why would you want to waste your time doing a planning project when the community is not involved? So Main Street's 4-point approach and 8 principles is all about inclusivity, is about diversity, is about identifying those human and capital assets that are in your community. It's about communication. It's about bringing all of the community to the table for a common vision. But if the community is not geared to be open to learn information, you've really wasted a lot of your time. So salting the pot, if you will, salting the water, is really important. Pre-wiring your communities that you're going to be bringing this initiative or this application to them, to let them know that this is going to be community driven, that this is not going to be government driven. It's all about what do they have to make happen. So the social trust of these communities, are they going to trust Main Street to pull this off? Are they going to trust Institute for Quality Communities to make it happen? How is this actually going to work? Well, because of the structure of Main Street and because of the planning project that we have at Institute for Quality Communities, the impact in our communities happened in the first few months. Some was immediate, where they could pull off a quick festival to get everybody's attention, to get them involved with their community development project, or they could do a facade renovations. And some of these that you see here took literally less than $1,000. Some of them were free. Well, how do you do that? Well, again, social trust, explaining how a Main Street program works with the management side. What is a planning project all about? Why does the community want to be involved? And without visual before and afters, it's really hard to get anybody engaged about seeing the difference. Because you want to have systemic change in your communities, right? It's about making your leaders smarter, more community oriented, listening to their community partners to make the biggest impact on them politically if they're elected officials, or make the biggest impact on a business owner. So they want to have these kind of visual demonstrations. So the impact in action is so very important. Some of the other aspects of actually pulling this off was, if you don't bring the community together at the very beginning and have a visioning discussion, what do you want the community to look like? Have it professionally facilitated. And that vision statement should be just a couple sentences long, and it's the future and present tense. It's not this long, short story at all. And that vision statement for that community about who they want to be in the future will drive everything that their program or work is going to do. That planning project is going to be part of that vision that they're going to pull off. The creation of their 4 committees, and the creation of a nonprofit to help manage this, or working with an existing nonprofit to make sure that this planning project is going to happen, is imperative. But also, if you're going to be showing these things, you need to have regular follow-up with the community, let them know, thank them for their participation, and let them know, how do you do that? Well, we refer back to Main Street. Those communities have to track every single month volunteer hours, for example. And there's a dollar value associated with your volunteer participation. You have to thank the community for the $10,000 last month that they spent at their free time to pull off that festival. You need to do that recognition to let them know. And once a month, letting them know what volunteer hours are, and maybe once a quarter, letting them know about the facade renovations, improvements inside of businesses, new businesses that are relocating to your historic business district, because there's a Main Street in place, because there's a management structure, because there's a commitment from community leadership to listen to what the community wants to see. And Main Street, I'll share with you, is the #1 economic development vehicle and tool in the United States still today for historic commercial district revitalization. For all of us that live in rural communities, and I grew up on a dirt road in a mud house, talk about valuable to have a structured program come and guide you through the way. And if we could flip through a couple of these slides so I can see where I'm at, because my timer stopped. And I'll be talking about, I have a conversation about the impact, about retail action, about businesses. And then at the end of this, and wrapping this up, we'll be talking about sustained engagement. That plaza that you just saw is in the middle of a downtown. This festival here is a mature festival that is just one of many festivals in this particular town to pull that off. So if you're funding these, right, these all take money. And so the structure of a Main Street program, the communication to the community, you're measuring the success. You know what people are investing. You know how much money it's going to take to pull off that festival, because you've been planning for a year, not a month. You've been planning for a year to pull that off. The money that you're going to raise, how are you going to approach that? How are you going to make those donations sustainable? There's a communication aspect about keeping those donors, those stakeholders in the fold by communicating consistently about the value of their support, their participation, and the like. So apologize for the jumbling on that aspect of my story about what it takes for regional connectivity and stakeholder engagement. It is like drinking from a fire hose. My apologies. more than happy to take questions at the end with everybody else. You can shoot me an email at mweaver@acogok.org. I'll be more than happy to respond to your emails, have conversations with you, do a Zoom, talk to your community organizations, share with why our success here and about a community program that we've got called SERI and how that can affect your community also. And thank you, Evelyn.
Wonderful. Thank you so very thank you so very much, Matthew, for all of that information. We are going to keep on rolling in with our next speaker. Hopefully you're taking great notes, and if you have any wonderful curiosities or comments, please do not hesitate to post them in the chat. I would like to introduce our next individual, who is Tiffany Henry. Tiffany comes by way of Arkansas. She recently switched from one phenomenal rural serving organization, The Conductor, and is now working with another phenomenal rural organization, Center on Rural Innovation. And she is a federal grants writer, but she is also everything about ecosystems and tech. So without further ado, Tiffany, I'm going to turn the reins over to you, and everyone enjoy.
Thank you, Evelyn. So hello, everyone. My name is Tiffany Henry, and I am a federal grant specialist with the Center on Rural Innovation, which we refer to as CORI. We, as a nonprofit, work to empower our partners across the country as they create new digital economic opportunities in the places they call home. Many people ask how it's possible to grow digital economies in rural places, especially when rural communities face incredible barriers like lack of broadband infrastructure or a dwindling skilled workforce. Sometimes the biggest challenge is just shifting the narrative and helping people to see the opportunity. So how do we do this? Through our Rural Innovation Initiative, we provide technical assistance and support to communities as they build ecosystem strategies that educate and train local residents in digital skills, employ them in digital jobs, and empower them to launch the startups that will drive their local economy. After this process, communities join the Rural Innovation Network, a nationwide convening of local change agents, all committed to advancing the economic future of their unique towns. Their journeys are as different as their communities, but they all share the same vision of a more equitable future. You can begin to do this work yourself in your own community and create a customized map of ecosystem building resources. I'm going to describe our 5-driver model, and I encourage you to write down all of the assets in your community that it already possesses, and think about how you can best use this information to grow your digital economy. So the 5 drivers that we use at CORI are inclusive tech culture building, scalable tech entrepreneur support and incubation, access to capital, digital workforce development and support, and access to digital jobs. You can do this exercise on your own, or you can convene a group of change agents as you develop your map. Who are the local visionaries? It doesn't always have to be someone in an official position of authority, but think of local champions that you know who can make a difference and have the grit and tenacity to persevere. And think critically about who needs to be at the table, and be intentional about including individuals and groups who have not historically had a voice. Sustainable grassroots ecosystem building must be done through an equitable lens, ensuring the opportunities that are identified are accessible and beneficial to all. So once you have your team, it's time to start identifying the 5 drivers in your community. Driver 1 is inclusive tech culture building. Just like your team, equity and inclusiveness must be at the forefront of all of this work. What are some active organizations in your community that have historically not been involved in economic development? Inclusive tech culture building is about creating collaboration and establishing new values and community norms that emphasize the importance of building a diverse ecosystem. Part of this culture requires a community-wide mindset that it is truly possible to build and sustain scalable tech startups in a digital economy. Driver 2 is scalable tech entrepreneur support and incubation. To build a rural digital economy, there must be support for the entrepreneurs you are wanting to grow. Are there any local mentors, inspirational and educational programs? What training resources does your community have to support their success and scalability? Support often takes the form of an incubator or accelerator program in addition to events and groups. Think about inspiration, validation, and education for future entrepreneurs. Where do people go to work remotely? Who is telling the stories of local founders? And what opportunities for entrepreneurs are there to connect and formalize their ventures? Driver 3 is access to capital. Entrepreneurs need money to grow. So who are your potential investors, either within or even outside of your community? Who is in your network that you can leverage and activate as much as possible? What are some mechanisms to attract capital and vehicles for investment in the area? Driver 4 is digital workforce development and support. Communities need training, education, and skilling programs that provide workers with digital skills that are attractive to employers, like coding, computer-assisted drafting, and data science. Do you have support services like apprenticeship programs or soft skills training? And driver 5 is access to digital jobs. If the digital talent is being trained, how are we connecting them to available jobs to ensure that they stay in our community and don't move away? Who is talking to local employers about current and future demand for digital skills? And how are you engaging with your remote workers? There are many ways to use this information once you have compiled your list. The first is to distribute. Lack of knowledge of available resources is consistently reported as one of the biggest barriers to entrepreneurship. So right here, you're looking at a simple list that I created for my state of Arkansas. All it cost me was time, but it provided incredible value for the people who were new to this space. The second way to use the assets identified is to look for opportunities to link them together to grow something new. So when I first started mapping assets in my town, some of the things that we identified were a local university, a collaborative mayor, and an engaged entrepreneur. And so we held a panel discussion that eventually turned into our monthly 1 Million Cups event. At Corey, we help rural communities all across the nation assess their 5 drivers, focusing on what is unique to them and identifying what we can leverage now to create new opportunities for the future. We convene local champions and create clear strategy plans and then connect them to other change agents from across the nation for continued learning. Once a community has their strategy plan, we help them find funding to grow their initiatives. 3 of our communities recently received Build to Scale awards totaling over $2.8 million. Each of these awards required a 1-to-1 match, which unlocked over $5.6 million in digital economy ecosystem support in these rural places. Each of these communities started with someone like you, someone who believed in the power of entrepreneurship and was committed to making a difference. You can make a change, and by identifying the 5 drivers in your community, you will create a map that will show you the way. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Tiffany. I think it's really cool because there's the ecosystem building component that you've done, but also Corey, whom you now work with, they are one of our strategic partners, and just the entire conversation around tech-enabled communities, and especially for rural, is so critical. And so I think it's just so neat that you're able to show like ecosystem building system level, but you're also being able to represent tech-enabled economies, system level, but also how you're working at local spaces with local practitioners to be able to provide that service for small business. So thank you very much. We do appreciate your time today. All right, next we have a dynamic duo coming by way of Tennessee, but serving multiple states, are both Rebecca Kaufman and Jade Clark with Ag Lunch. Certainly we all know that agriculture, there's a shift that's been happening, And these two women, they are definitely pioneers on the cutting edge. And I'm not going to take up any of their time. I'm just going to let them tell you all about what's happening in their neck of the woods. So without further ado, Miss Rebecca, Miss Jade, thank you, and launch.
Fantastic. So I'm Rebecca Kaufman. I'm the Senior Director at Ag Launch, and I have a background in economic development in the Delta region, which is the region that Ag Launch serves mostly. And I'm here with Jade Clark, who is our Director of Talent Development, and she's also a food scientist and small farmer. Next. So as Evelyn just said, Ag is really in the middle of a new wave of innovation, and it's really focused on biologics, soil health, uses of technology for efficiencies. But what's a little scary about that is if we're not intentional, the wealth created in this new wave of ag innovation is going to amass to the same group of people it always has. So this is actually a picture of some corn that's being grown in a cover crop, which is really exciting for soil health. So that's what you're looking at. Next. So when we start talking about how to build an inclusive ecosystem, particularly with communities of color, what we realized is that most of our work was focused on that tan part of this wealth creation pyramid, when we really needed to be thinking about that green part of the triangle. And so most ecosystems start just where we did, but if we wanted to be inclusive, we really needed to look towards that bigger, broader part of the ecosystem building from the ground up. Okay. So our current model right now, that tan section of work that we're working on is really focused on attracting, oh yeah, you can keep going, sorry, next, that was right, is really focused on recruiting early stage, but pretty established startups to run on-farm trials with our farmer network members in exchange for equity. So the farmer provides feedback, data, all kinds of really valuable information to those startups. And then in exchange, they are part owners in that startup company. And that works really well, but mostly we have to ensure that those startup founders and those farmers are both diverse. So this is a great example. The problem with that is it's really hard, mostly because of our own limitations, but because BIPOC farmers and founders continuously face barriers that others don't. Historical exploitation, discrimination, access to quality land, which is kind of what you're looking at here. This is a farmer who is converting his conventional corn production to organic. And he had a lot of issues with weeds this year because of a lot of rainfall. We had a lot of rain, but also his land sits kind of in a shallow area and it holds a lot of water. So he had a lot of hard times getting in and keeping up with what had to be done for organic production, whereas some of his neighbors who are farming less marginal land didn't face some of those same barriers. So as we were looking at that and trying to figure out how we were going to build into the bottom part of that triangle, we created AgriSoul Food, and realizing there's a lack of resources for meaningful existing efforts that are happening to engage BIPOC farmers and founders. And there's a tremendous opportunity to bridge a wealth gap in agriculture right now at this moment in time. So we tried to create a talent pipeline. It was originally designed to be an extension of our current work, but because of our kind of lack of understanding, for lack of a better term, we weren't entirely comfortable building a real inclusive ecosystem the way we had done kind of that middle section work. Now I'm going to hand it over to Jade.
So as Rebecca mentioned, we had a gap in our understanding, and to kind of close that gap, we formed a steering committee of BIPOC leaders in ag, tech, and entrepreneurship to help guide our talent development strategy. The insight that they provided was invaluable, and it identified a need for us to basically pivot, adjust our approach in deploying a technical assistant, and also to widen our scope a little bit in order to build some long-term relationships and to maximize our impact. Next slide, please. So today, AgriSoul Food, it focuses heavily on exposing youth and also non-ag tech talent to opportunities in food and agriculture, It also, we're working to build the capacity of socially disadvantaged farmers, as well as the cooperatives in these organizations that serve them. And also to develop replicable pilot programs where we're able to demonstrate success. Next slide. So this is one of our early exposure initiatives, the K-12 Roundtable. It's comprised of local food and ag organizations, industry experts, universities, and school district leadership. The group convenes bi-monthly, and we brainstorm ideas to engage and support students inside and outside of the classroom. And we're also providing professional development to teachers at the schools that traditionally do not have ag experience. Next slide, please. 48-Hour Launch is a youth entrepreneurship program that we developed because we believe that entrepreneurship is key to closing the wealth gap. And we also know that students of color are typically less exposed to entrepreneurship. Ag Launch partnered with Code Crew and Light Memphis to help teens take their ideas and turn them into solid business models through workshops, teamwork, and skills building. While Memphis currently leads the country in Black tech talent, there is still very little BIPOC participation in the agri-food sector. So as we strive to bring awareness to our youth, we also continue to think of ways to engage existing tech entrepreneurs and identify agri-food applications for their products and services through events like hackathons and ideation sessions. Next slide. One way that we're also partnering with HBCUs and developing the skills and capacity of college students is through our HBCU Challenge. So through the challenge, we are aiming to build an entrepreneurship culture, which most of the HBCU campuses lack, with faculty and staff serving as ambassadors to the students who are developing technologies and business solutions that are addressing health and wellness related issues that affect primarily communities of color. Next slide. So this is a photo from our Purple Hull P project. We were out on the field. Oh, sorry, wrong picture. This is a field day. So with our local partner, Memphis Tilth, we are deploying cohort-based learning through an urban ag academy to increase food production in the greater Memphis area. Memphis is one of the most food insecure cities in the country, but there is really a lack of food production that has caused basically a huge barrier and hindrance. And that's something that's less of the focus. Food access is the primary focus, but food production, we feel, should also be a focus as well. So Memphis Tilth is leading a urban ag academy to address food production, to teach more farmers, and then also to help the greater Memphis area increase their institutional purchasing from BIPOC farmers. On-farm direct technical assistance and mentorship opportunities will be made available to the program participants as well. Next slide, please. So this is the picture this is a pea harvester from a Purple Hull Pea project that we are working on in partnership with Alcorn State University in Partnership for a Healthy America. We're working with several farmers in the Mississippi Delta to demonstrate mechanized pea harvesting and the economics of that, and in order to help them realize their vision of becoming the Purple Hull Pea capital of the world. Next slide. Another focus of our strategy, this is our one of our summer interns, Miss Allison. She's from Memphis, and she is a student at University of Arkansas Pine Bluff. She went through one of our summer internship programs that we are providing basically paid learning opportunities to students of color that typically don't have family farms or ag immersion opportunities available to them during their summer break. Next slide, please. This is Milestone Cooperative. This is their headquarters. They converted their gym. This was a high school. They're headquartered in a high school, a former high school. And they converted the gym to a hydroponics operation. They were donated this equipment, or they received this equipment through a grant funding, but they did not have the technical support to get the equipment up and running and into production. So we were able to provide them with a specialist that will train the trainers and also create some training materials for this operation, which is expected to provide about 20 jobs to youth and also disabled adults in the Mileston and Chula communities. Next slide, please. So what's next? What do we need in addition to technical assistance and capital? There's an urgent need for us to create some meaningful connections, partnerships, and networks to ignite creativity and extend wealth and opportunity to the people who need it most. Culturally appropriate approaches and also go forward strategies will lead to more resilient BIPOC-owned businesses that are better positioned to take advantage of future opportunities in the sector. Next slide, please. So as we continue to expand this work, the Agri-Soul Food Project has been foundational to our long-term ecosystem building strategy. And while we have not been able to slow down per se, the need is just so great. We have been able to be more intentional about relationship building and truly understanding the needs of the BIPOC communities in order to deploy sustainable solutions instead of quick fixes. So this is Allie. She's a fellow food scientist, and we are at the Delta School in Arkansas, and we're talking to kids and we're really trying to understand you know, how she can better improve her food science for kids program in order to get more youth and young folks engaged in ag. Next slide, please. So what is our long-term goal, basically? Memphis and the Delta region has a long history in agriculture with a parallel history of poverty, disenfranchisement, and misaligned investment. But despite this, we believe that the region is perfectly positioned with access to natural resources, world-class technology, and the talent that is necessary to drive innovation in the agri-food tech sector. So our end goal is to establish a BIPOC agri-food ecosystem in the Delta region with Memphis as the hub. Last slide. So in closing, Ag Launch wholeheartedly believes that creating a holistic talent pipeline that is specifically built to find and attract those that have been historically marginalized is imperative to us realizing our vision of farms of the future and transform communities. This is one of our farmers, BIPOC-owned farm in Georgia. It's very diverse. When we think about what farms of the future look like, they are diverse. There's a diverse, group of farmers, women, minorities that are the farmers of these farms of the future. And this particular farm, they have vineyards, they're growing row crops, cotton, peanuts, soybeans. So that's what we envision, these diverse types of farms with diverse farmers, and they're flourishing and very successful in transforming, and pivotal basically in transforming their communities. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much, Rebecca and Jade. Since we still have one person that we need to hear from today, and don't want to steal any time away from him. We appreciate everyone hanging in there. What's really cool is you can tell our partners, they just vary and they're so different. But one thing I think you will see is the vein of connectivity, that they are always partnering with different people and or businesses within their ecosystem, universities, the COGS. Everything relates and ties into economic development. Having said that, last but not least, today you are going to hear from Mr. Jerry Mitchell. He is the president and CEO for the Alabama State Black Chamber of Commerce. I just want you to know, Mr. Mitchell, he's been very busy. Within the past couple months, he has actually expanded his network to include 2 additional chambers, both in rural areas. But I'm not going to steal your thunder, Mr. Mitchell. I'm just teeing you up. So without further ado, Mr. Mitchell, we'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Evelyn. I really appreciate that. First, I'm gonna apologize to everybody. I've enjoyed everybody's presentations. I don't have a lot of pretty pictures to show, so I apologize for that. I'm kind of old school, got a lot of words, so hopefully when I'm talking, you can visualize what I'm talking about. So next slide, please. Okay, basically about us, we're a nonprofit organization headquartered in sunny Birmingham, Alabama. Right now it's about 83 degrees, still having summer. We currently have 8 affiliate chambers statewide, just added 2, as Evelyn mentioned, that are in our Wiregrass chamber and our East Alabama chamber that both combined cover about 13 rural counties. And basically what we're focused on is advancing the economic, intellectual, and social conditions of both our affiliates and our members and the communities that they serve. And we chose those words very carefully. Economic use of economics is obvious. Intellectual has more to do with expanding awareness, information-wise. And we believe if we can do the first 2, that it's going to improve the overall social conditions in the various communities that we serve throughout Alabama. Next chart, please. Okay, this is just a quick graphic of our various chambers. You can see got the Birmingham Metro, Huntsville Metro, Mobile, which is at the south end of our state near the beach, and our river region, which covers Montgomery, Alabama, and some surrounding counties, and then our newer ones, Wiregrass and the East Alabama chambers, and then of course we have Tuscaloosa and the Northeast Alabama, which is another rural area, which covers Gadsden, the counties where Gadsden and Anderson, Alabama is our headquarters. Next chart, please. Uh-oh. Try again. That was not, okay, slowly gonna come. All right, awesome. So this is our footprint, kind of shows you, got the map of Alabama. We've got 67 counties in Alabama. We're probably doing about 40 plus of the counties where we have outreach in, but we can reach anywhere in the state, basically. Next chart, please. Okay, so some of our strategic goals, we're trying to grow a strong, vital, united Black business community because we want to match the national statistics. If you look at nationally and compare what's going on in our state, Black businesses are at the lower end in terms of revenue generations amongst any other groups. And when we compare that to our national statistics, we lag behind our national statistics for Black businesses by some $40,000. Also, we want to create value for both our affiliate chambers and the members of those chambers, and position ourselves as the leading advocate on for Black businesses. So we go and speak to our legislators. Go back one. Thank you. Go and speak to our legislators at the state level, our governor, and at local levels. And each year we work to update what we're doing, our operations, in terms of make sure we're aligned with what's kind of going on and what we need to do. Next, please. Okay, so here's some of our program and services. We're big on education and training. We try to promote best practices. Of course, we do advocacy, work on capacity building for our affiliates and our members. We offer free technical assistance. We do business and economic research. We have a youth entrepreneurial program that we roll out into our middle schoolers and high school students. We have a church economic development initiatives, and what that is about is that we work with some of our churches who've gotten into community development. We have one church that they were able to create an affordable housing program where they actually built a subdivision, and with about 43 homes, where anybody that's in the subdivision, they have to go through a home ownership program. And then if they pay everything on time for about 5 years, they're able to actually purchase the home. And so we like to model things so we can roll them out to other churches around the state. And then of course we engage in with our political leaders. Next chart, please. So one of the things that we found out, and looks like I'm actually missing a chart, but one of the things that we found out when we looked at in terms of Black businesses, what were some of their concerns, issues. We found out that we still have issues with access to capital. Most of the businesses are aggregated into slow performing, low growth industries. A lot of the businesses don't have the tools that they need to grow. A number of them were still distressed, some still recovering from when we had the Great Recession, and now with the COVID pandemic, slow coming out of that. And then seeing that there was no real advocacy. So what our response was, we were fortunate enough to become a BDO with LISC Rural, and we were able to hire a rural markets manager. So that person was able to connect with all of our various counties and bring technical assistance to those. And the good thing about it is they do not have to be in any of the areas where we have a chamber affiliate. We can actually go to them either using Zoom or physically go and basically, as we like to say, lay hands on them. We also partnered with the Alabama Small Business Development Center Network on a statewide consulting contract where it affords us financial opportunities to go into any county in Alabama and work with anybody. We also noticed that during the pandemic, when folks were filing for the PPP assistance, a lot of our businesses were not able to get that funding. One of the reasons was because in many cases they did not have the financial documentation that they needed. So again, we partnered with the Alabama Small Business Development Center Network through a grant. And we formed this, what we call our QuickBooks tour. So right now we're doing a 10-city QuickBooks tour where we provide QuickBooks training to attendees. And once they complete that, then we actually purchase a 1-year subscription for them to QuickBooks Essentials. So our goal was 10 cities, 6 urban, 4 rural. So it's exciting because we got to go into a small city, Bolaji, Alabama, population 400. And we're able to work with some of the businesses there and get them those subscriptions. Next charts, please. Also, our response, we expanded a number of our banking relationships. One of the things that we like to do is if one of our constituents needs funding, we build a profile. And so our partners include banks, credit unions, and community development financial institutions. So we're able to build a profile and actually, without the business actually having to go in, we're able to shop the profile with our partners. And that way, the small business owner does not have to waste time going around and having their credit pulled by a number of people. And that has worked out very well for us. We've been able to secure loans for some of our clients as small as $5,000 all the way up to the largest amount that we've ever done is 1.1 million. Also in August, we became at the end of August, we became a Kiva trustee, and we have just had our first success with a Kiva loan about a week ago. Another thing that we did to foster more connectivity amongst the businesses and to have a tool that large prime companies could access businesses that are interested in supplier diversity. We launched a online business directory called the Alabama Green Book. It's a statewide Black business directory. Has over 65 categories of businesses in it. And we think that's going to be a great tool for us going forward. And we're adding about 100 to 200 new businesses to this directory each month. Ongoing, we're currently surveying our businesses statewide to kind of obtain basically a comprehensive look at Black businesses, a profile, if you will, to say both to our officials and other interested parties. Here's what's happening with Black businesses in our state, and potentially here's how you can help them. So we'll be seeking to published this information and provided to key business and industry executives, as well as political leaders and university officials. Next chart, please. Moving on, getting ready for 2022. So we're going to continue all of the programs that we had in 2021. And then some of the new things that we're doing, we're creating this thing called a Small Business Institute, which is a 8-course training program, which is basically, as we say, like considers the cultural intelligence that we've gathered in connecting with literally thousands of businesses around the state, but it's centered on some basic business fundamentals. So we're going to roll it out through all of our chambers, and we'll be able to present it statewide. Another thing that we want to do is we noted that about 67% of our clients that we service are women business owners. So we're creating this mentorship program with more seasoned business owners, where they will work with some of the new and younger business owners. And then last but not least, I guess similar to what the previous speakers were saying in the Ag Lunch program, we have this program that we're going to do with our historically Black colleges within the state of Alabama, where we have about 12, and we're launching this college chamber program where we will actually offer some entrepreneurship training, along with a community leadership aspect component to it, to show the students not only entrepreneurship, but also the importance of giving back to the community. And so the way the program will basically work is that we'll have speakers in each month on some area. Say, for example, if we have someone there to speak on education, we'll be looking for the students to basically listen, to come up with entrepreneurial solutions to issues that are brought up. Next chart, please. And I think that was my last one. And I like to close with a little story that we like to tell. Years ago, I met a Catholic priest. His name is Father George Clements. They actually did a made-for-TV movie about him years ago, and he told this story about being real busy and being on the south side of Chicago and trying to work with the folks in that area. And he said that a gentleman came to speak to him that was from community services, and the way he described me, he said, it was this large Irishman. He came to speak to him, and he said, hey, Father Clements, we got all these things going on in your area here. You got like literally thousands of kids on the street that are homeless, don't have food, and things of that nature. And, you know, Father Clements, being a busy man, he said that he was listening and kind of doing the thing. Yeah, kind of trying to speed it along. And so finally, he was ready to get back to his work. So he said he tapped the guy on the shoulder, on his arm, to let him know, hey, this time's up, you know, I need to move on. And he said, the gentleman told him, he stood up, he said, hey, Father Clements, you don't have to rush me out, usher me out. I was about to go anyway, but before I leave, and Father Clements said he actually pointed his finger at him and said, before I leave, I want to let you know, if you don't care about your kids, don't expect us to either. And he said he was struck by that. And he went on to form national programs like Each One Reach One, that works with folks coming out of going through drug rehabilitative processes. And then he started these programs with the churches where they adopt kids that were on the street homeless. So I always think about that. And so one of the things that we say with our group is basically, if our community doesn't care about our businesses, we can't really expect anybody else to either. So I'll close with that, and look forward to answering any questions.
Thank you so very much. Mr. Mitchell, always very interesting. The work that you do, the connectivity, but also keeping it real. You know, this really is about community. It's about people. It's about sharing, but it's also about understanding how we sew into one another and how that has a trickle-down effect and impacts our communities and families. Beth, well, so I'm going to turn the last, oh, it's 2 o'clock. Well, I'm going to turn over the last comments to Beth, but very quickly, I will just say to our presenters, thank you so much for talking about different dots in the small business ecosystem. For those who stayed on with all of our technical difficulties, thank you for hanging in there, and we hope that this was a great session. Beth, over to you.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll just wrap up really quickly. I echo the gratitude that Evelyn shared for everybody's expertise here and the engagement in the chat from everybody who participated. And I'll just say, you know, we're still continuing to build out the work here at Rural LISC around small business development, and we look forward to partnering with all of you in that work. And I had a first today. I've never advanced slides without sound during a presentation before, so we made it happen, and we can celebrate that. But thank you all for your time and your expertise and your stories. It takes a lot of different perspectives and a lot of different types of work to make small businesses successful in our communities, and we look forward to continuing to build on that success. Please do enjoy the closing session and the virtual tour of the Delta that we weren't able to do in person today. And please keep in touch with Evelyn and I about your needs as small business development organizations and around access to capital for small business. We really see each other as partners, and look forward to continuing the work together. Thank you again, everybody, and have a great afternoon.